Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Reign of Darkness and Light podcast. This is episode 2. The first episode, the actual first episode, was technically episode 0 is what I called it, as it was more of an introduction. Episode 1, we went over the Road Out project and what that is. And now we start what the actual goal of this podcast was. And that is to go through each one of my albums, break it down, and talk about them, discuss them. And please, if you're enjoying these, feel free to subscribe to the podcast, like it on YouTube, send me hate mail, whatever. I'm okay with whatever. I've said this already in a few, but I really am enjoying doing these. I really am. It's been a lot of fun during this COVID-19 stuff. It's been fun for me as I kind of go through and listen to my old stuff that I haven't listened to in years. I mean, dear Lord, this album is almost 13 years old. But this is what started it all, this album. Again, the album is called Eerie for the Modern Civilization. So, I really don't have a specific format of how I want to do this. This is my first time doing something like this, so bear with me as I might stumble. But let's try and get through it. Okay, so first things first. The background music that you're hearing is actually a song from the album. The song is called The Looker's Suicide, or The Modern Dilemma. This was actually the first song I ever wrote by myself, without anyone else. And this is the song that inspired everything for me, and what would eventually become the Reign of Darkness and Light. I just thought I would kind of throw it in the background just so you can kind of hear a little bit of something. I still haven't come up with a cool intro track or an introduction thing at the beginning for my podcast, but someday I'll get there. Maybe when this gains more traction. I also want to point out too, I've been posting these on YouTube. However, they are also on Spotify now. They will be updated as soon as I upload them. They'll be on Spotify, hopefully within the hours that I upload them. iTunes is to follow soon. I just got to get it approved. Okay, now back to the music. So this album, Eerie for the Modern Civilization. The cover, which you can see as the clip art or the little art for this podcast, it's just a picture of the ocean, some mountains above it. The top half of the picture is the light, and below it is the dark. It was kind of my way of showing the reign of darkness and light, kind of in an eerie way. So what does the album name Eerie for the Modern Civilization mean? Well, I've said it 1,000 times already in this episode. I'll say it again. This album is eerie. When you're listening to it, it changes dramatically. It's got animals, it's got aliens, dark piano melodies, some long, strung out guitars, some other particularly long songs that are abstract, absurd, and just eerie altogether. The listeners of this album are what I described as the modern civilization. So therefore, listening to this is eerie for you guys to listen to. It was eerie for me to write and produce, and for people who have listened to it already, I've been told it's eerie for them. Thus the name, Eerie for the Modern Civilization. I know that sounds a little redundant, but that was my thinking back then. Again, this is 13 years ago. I was almost 13 years ago. I was 18 when I started doing this. I'm now 30. Dang. That kind of puts a weird perspective on this stuff. But anyway, I actually had some questions that some people who have listened to the first podcasts and also have listened to my music, or this album in particular, have asked me. And if you guys also have questions, please send them to me, and I'll try and answer them on the next episode. And episodes after that, and after that, and after that, as questions or comments or concerns, or just general statements come in, I'll try to address them. So, let's go through, before we do these questions, let's go through the track list first. So we start off with the track Slither Beckoning, a Prologue. Now, obviously this is a prologue track. It's kind of an introductory track. It's a very ambient song. Kind of heavy synthesizer style. Kind of got some dark atmospheric tones to it. It was all done through MIDI, and it was supposed to be happy. It's supposed to be a happy kind of, oh, this album's going to be a joyous album. Like, what's this darkness stuff that, this artist is talking about? And then, boom, it ends on a dark note. Kind of ends on a cliffhanger, if you will, followed by some radio static. When I recorded this, I had an old alarm clock radio. And every once in a while, I'll just kind of like tune through the frequencies and just get like radio static or funny things that people were saying. And I would just sample them, just record them and throw them in songs. So that's kind of what that is at the end. That's me just recording the radio static. And that radio effect leads into our next song, which is the one that was playing at the beginning of this episode, The Looker's Suicide, or The Modern Dilemma. Like I stated before, this is the first song I ever made. The radio effect from the previous is at the beginning of this song, and then is at the end of this song, and kind of ends. The whole song is composed from this kind of dark, creepy, eerie, if you will, melody I created on this piano that was in my parents' house. It was my dad's piano. Majority of the songs on this album that have piano were recorded live through my computer's microphone. I've stated before, it's not the best way to record audio. And you can hear those audio distortions happen every once in a while throughout this album. But I would wait till both my parents were at work and I was at home by myself, or maybe my siblings were around, and that's when I would record. Because I was kind of shy about playing piano in front of people. I'm not very good at it. And again, you can hear mistakes throughout this song, throughout the whole album. Which was something I had a long time ago. I had this idea that songs don't have to be perfect. They should have mistakes. And rather than overcorrecting them, we should just leave them in there. So I think like the very first 6 albums I did all had that goal. If a mistake was in there, I just went with it. Since then, things have changed because I realized it's not as appealing to the ear as I originally thought. So anyway, back to this track. So yeah, it's created by this piano melody that I had just stuck in my head for a day or two. I'd think about it at school when I was going to Front Range College and would work on it. So that's where that melody came from. I think it was inspired by just kind of horror movies and sci-fi movies in general. I was a big fan of that stuff back then, still am today. Towards the beginning of the song, you can hear a faint voice that's kind of screaming in the background, and the voice is screaming, "Let me out of here," over and over again. That was me, and I did that by yelling into a window curtain. I kind of muffled up my mouth and just recorded myself yelling into this window curtain. You'll hear a lot of other sounds throughout this song, all recorded by me as well. I was hitting the table, hitting the computer, flicking a lighter, moving chairs around on the floor, opening and closing doors. There's like some weird, like almost like a demonic voice towards the beginning also that you can hear say, "I am immortal." And then there's like some alien noises thrown in there as well. These are all made by me. I just manipulated my voice and did different effects and stuff. It was a lot of fun creating those voices. And again, you'll hear that throughout the album. You'll hear a lot of these weird alien noises and stuff. And I did all of them for the most part. So then the song ends with more static, and it just kind of fades out. That was kind of my introduction into the world of Road Owl, or Reign of Darkness and Light. The third track, Look into Bright Perspective. This whole entire song was done on the piano. Again, background noises, you'll hear them throughout this song. It's me just doing simple household chores. I would literally just set my computer down, hit record, and just do chores. Sweeping, mopping, doing dishes, just cleaning, organizing things. I just recorded me doing that, and then I just kind of overlaid it in the background of this piano melody. I started playing with effects on the piano to kind of make it sound old-timey. So that was kind of fun. Again, you'll hear mistakes in this song. Sometimes you'll hear the piano get a little quiet, and then you can kind of hear the feedback of the mic on my computer all of a sudden get really intense, and then it would distort it really bad. That was a setting that I had on my computer back then that I totally forgot about ever turning off. And so there's a lot of songs that I accidentally had that in, but I had already recorded it and didn't want to redo it. Alright, now for the next track, track 4, Tragidos. This was the very first song I ever recorded with a guitar. Now, I have, still in my possession, one of those cheap little acoustic classical guitars you can get for like $50 at Toys R Us, or you could get at Toys R Us back when they were still around. And that was a songwriting instrument for me. I made a lot on that guitar. Even to this day, I still kind of tinker around on it and write stuff on it. Of course, I'll, change it later and make it better sounding, better guitars or whatever. But that's a good songwriting tool for me. Now, in the background of this track, you hear people talking. Lots of people talking. And again, I took my computer, I would take it to Front Range with me every day because I used it at school. And one day I was just sitting in the cafeteria there at Front Range working on homework. Probably not working on homework, actually, if I think about it. I was probably writing songs. And I just recorded the ambient noise around me. And so that's what you hear, is just people at Front Range in the student lounge cafeteria area. This is the first song I started experimenting with panning the sounds from left to right. So that was a big stepping stone for me. There's a weird monster noise at the beginning of this song, which was, again, also me. This is also the first song I did with a bass guitar. I own a acoustic fretless bass, and I just positioned it in front of my microphone on my computer and just played along. And also, you can hear some noises of me like hitting the guitars and hitting the strings and making some odd noises coming out. I even took like a screwdriver at one point and was kind of messing around with the guitar with a screwdriver, and just some weird stuff like that. So, yeah. The next song, Interluding Sounds and Intermission. All of the sound clips in this song, it's not really even a song. It's got no melody whatsoever. It's just a bunch of sound clips from GarageBand on my MacBook. If you guys are familiar with GarageBand, or even the old GarageBand, they had lots of fun samples and loops that were royalty free. You could use them on whatever you want. And I just kind of tinkered around with those. And that's really all that track is just, it's an interlude. Yeah, song starts and ends with some clapping and some cheering, kind of like they're clapping and cheering me on, like I've got my own little studio audience. Yeah, it was a fun piece to make. Okay, so this next track, Dramatizational Equality. So all of this was done on MIDI. I kind of set this song up as a scene, right? So like there's kind of a story to follow. And when you listen to it, you'll hear the beginning. At the beginning, you'll hear a man who, it sounds like he's walking home, and you can hear the phone ringing, right? Like the phone's ringing in his house. He's walking, and then you hear him go inside and shut the door. As soon as he shuts the door, he answers the phone and just says hello, and is immediately killed. And then you hear thunder, sirens, and a loud bell. And then the song starts. This is where the eeriness kind of comes in to this. The other tracks before this, except for track number 2, The Looker's Suicide, they were kind of happy. Not crazy happy, like not like jumping up and down, joyous occasion happy, but they were happier. This is the first kind of twisted turn of events in the album. Lots of heavy synths in this song. Really just wanted to get a scene, like I said before. I just really wanted to paint this picture of this poor man. And then it kind of fades out into some orchestra. That was another sample from GarageBand. That was not anything I created. That was a loop from GarageBand. And then about 15-20 seconds into that orchestral piece, you'll hear the sound of an alien kind of going in and out. That also was a sample from GarageBand. I did not come up with that one. And the alien voices, they keep continuing, they continue. So, did he die, or did he maybe get abducted by aliens? That's kind of left up to the listener on that song. And then the alien voices go right into the next song, which is called Sit Back and Receive. This song is another one that I use the acoustic guitar on. You'll hear a lot of clicking and clacking noises. Again, from me just hitting my desk, hitting a coffee cup. I took a coffee cup and flipped it upside down, and then took another coffee cup and had it right side up and tried to make like a small little drum set. And I had all these items on my desk, all these pens and paper clips and a stapler and all this stuff. And at the very end of the song, you hear like a crash, right? And that I just took everything in my hands and just dropped it on my keyboard. And it kind of went violent. So, yeah, it was just kind of a crashing down. But that song is kind of like a part 2 to the previous track, Dramatizational Equality. Then we have the next song, so it's called Happy Never Ending. This also was done completely on MIDI. It was going to be the end track on the album, and it was just it's kind of happy, kind of dark, kind of just all over the place. But it's a simple song. A lot of these songs in the beginning were very simple, but they were very drawn out, kind of progressive in a way. But then I wanted to write one more song, and so that's why I titled it Happy Neverending. Originally, I think it was just going to be called The Happiest of Endings, or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly. But then I created the final track, which is called Slither Beckoning, an Epilogue, which kind of ties back the very first track, Slither Beckoning, a Prologue. This song was composed, again, on the piano at my parents' house, and it's got a little bit of MIDI keyboard in the background. It's a very happy song. It's a happy ending to the album, and it kind of calls back to the first track. And then on the album, if you go to bandcamp.com and search for Reign of Darkness and Light and then find this album, there's a bonus track which I just called The Interview. And this was literally just me talking about the album and answering some questions. There's some noises in the background that I did on MIDI keyboard just to kind of make it silly. And honestly, some of that stuff from the interview is what I'm going to bring up next. A couple things I want to point out about the album as a whole. Again, it was my first album, so I was very experimental. The first 6 albums I did were very experimental. So we have Eerie for the Modern Civilization, which is what we're discussing now. Next came Controlled Exposure. After that was Catastrophic Science. After that was The Looking Glass Chronicles. After that one came Ventriloquist Parades. And then after that was The Anarchobelious Musician. Now, those 6 albums I all wrote within like a year and a half of each other. All 6 of them came out within about a year and a half. Right, all from like 2008 to 2010. So they all have very similar themes, similar ideas, similar progressions, similar recording styles, random recordings, samples, all that fun stuff. After that, I started taking a more mature approach to the music I would create. But until then, yeah, we're on the first album, so we'll get to those other ones later. Okay, so some of the interview questions. Let's see here. Where did you get your ideas for the songs? Back then, and I think still to this day, I have a very abstract mind when it comes to creating music. This album was a collection of ideas I had had for years when I was in the other bands that I could never use in those bands, and that is true. When I was with the pop punk band Jets and Saddle, this music wouldn't have fit there. When I was in the Christian pop rock band Rough Draft, this also wouldn't have worked. I did like a 3-month period where I was in a metal band called Dodge This. This wouldn't have fit in there either. This was my own creations. It had to be released just by myself. Let's see. Yeah, the music on this album is very different. It's very obscure. That's how I wanted it. You can't classify this album as like one genre. You kind of have to look at it as a collection of genres that I find appealing. The songs are long, they're very sporadic, but again, it's just my ideas being recorded along with a lot of other stuff going on in the background. Each song is an idea, and each one can tell a story. I truly believed when I was creating this album that you as a listener could listen to each one of these tracks and kind of create your own story. I just created the background music and set the scene for you. Alright, so how did you make the songs? Um, yeah, it's hard to justify how each song was made. I kind of went over it a little bit, in that last little chunk where I went through each song, but sometimes I'd create the background noise first and then create a melody over it. Some of them I would record the melody first and then just add some background stuff. Various jobs I had, I would record machines and stuff doing things, and I would throw those in the tracks somewhere. I would record the radio noises, and then I had acoustic guitar, acoustic bass. One thing I do also want to point out is with all of the MIDI, everything that's MIDI in this song, I did not own a MIDI keyboard. So I used my actual computer keyboard as the MIDI keyboard. If you've ever played with GarageBand or Logic, you'll know what I'm talking about. You can turn your computer keyboard into a MIDI keyboard, and it makes writing songs very difficult. It wasn't for another maybe 3 or 4 albums that I finally got a small MIDI keyboard to actually write. I'd record my voice. I'd record just random sounds, manipulate them, make them into other things, again, to set the scene. What is your overall feeling on the record? I very much enjoyed creating random, obscure, abstract noises and songs, and it was just fun. I'm very big into progressive style music, orchestral music in general, but lots of progressive rock, progressive metal, lots of ambient stuff, like Brian Eno. So you can kind of hear that in some of this stuff. And then in this interview, someone said, "Any last words?" And I just said, "Enjoy, give me feedback, and listen. Everything has a beat and a rhythm. You just have to listen." And I think that's true. I really, actually, I still believe that's true. There's been so many times where I've been at work and I hear the same repetitive noise, or even just at home and you hear the fan going and you kind of create a song out of it. And I actually do that later on in some of the other albums. Alright, now for a couple questions that came up in some of the listeners of this podcast when they listened to this album on Bandcamp. And just a reminder too, I will post the link to this album so you can listen to it in the description. But for all those that are just listening, just go to bandcamp.com and search for Reign of Darkness and Light. You'll find my profile. It's a picture of me with a mask on. And then go to my discography and go scroll all the way down to the bottom to my oldest stuff, and you'll find all my albums. And you'll find this album, Eerie for the Modern Civilization. Everything on that website is free. You can download it. You can stream it. You can pay if you want. You can send money my way. I won't complain, but you don't have to. Okay, so a couple questions. How did the names of the songs come about? So this is a tough one for me to try and figure out how to answer, because honestly, I don't remember what I was thinking when I came up with some of these. I just know that some of them, I had a certain feeling. The Looker's Suicide, the first track I ever made. I just had this weird, eerie feeling of someone's death. Someone taking their own life. And I think that's why I called it that. Now, this idea of the Looker, what is the Looker? That's a question that will be answered in a later podcast when I get to the album The Looking Glass Chronicles. Because there is this idea of a person that I did come up with called the Looker. And I will go into more detail on that when we get to that album. I think that is album number 4 or 5. That is album number 4. So we will get to that soon. And then, some other ones like Tragidos. I called that song Tragidos because I thought it was kind of a happier song, but it had some kind of creepy elements to it. So it was like a dose of tragedy added into this song. So I called it Tragidos. Let's see, what other songs? Sit Back and Receive. That's just Again, I came up with some obscure titles. I really don't know where they came from, but I believe that one came up with me kind of just chilling and just listening and just trying to take in all the sounds and record them, right? Um, can't really speak for some of these other ones. Slither Beckoning and for the prologue and epilogue. I don't know where that came from, but it sounds cool. Maybe that's what I honestly thought. Some of them, this individual that asked me this question said that they almost sound cryptic. It's like a mashed up words together. And I did that a lot. On a lot of albums, I've done that. Where I take lots of words and put them together. Inspiration of the song sounds. Where's the inspiration for this? Really just life in general. I would just see things and hear things and listen to things and would just kind of go, that crashing of that coffee cup with all those pins, that could be in a song. Like just random stuff like that. The dramatizational equality. That one again, like I stated before, it's a very sci-fi / horror themed, and that's what I was really into, and so that's kind of what I came up with. I tried to set this scene. I keep talking about setting this scene, but that's kind of what I was doing with my music. Is there a remaster in the future? Yes. Well, kind of. I have thought about going back on this album when I hit like 15 years, doing like a 15th anniversary remastered version. Some of these songs I don't want to touch. I like how they are. Specifically, The Looker's Suicide. I love that track as is. I do not want to touch it. I don't want to do anything with it. Maybe increase some of the volumes, maybe change some of that stuff, but I really don't want to remaster it. Now, some of the other stuff I definitely could get a little smooth polish done on them. So that is something I'm thinking about doing in the future. I don't think I'll do it with all my albums, but this album for sure, just being kind of my staple album, the very first one I ever did, I definitely have toyed with that idea. And then someone asked me, when you were creating this, was your intent on sharing it with people and it getting big, or just an artistic itch? Honestly, more of an artistic itch. Like I said, I was in some bands, and I just love music. It's my thing. I love music, I love art, I love literature. It's what I do, but music is the prominent force in all of that. I enjoy what I do with music, what I have accomplished with music. But there was no way that I could get some of my artistic itches of the type of music I wanted to do out in the other bands, like I said before. And so I needed to get them out. Even if I was the only person, and maybe my girlfriend at the time, now wife, or my family, if they were the only ones that ever got to listen to it, that's fine. I by no means ever wanted to be famous, or even want to be famous with this music. But who knows? Maybe someday it'll take off. Maybe someday someone will pick it up. I always want to be creating. I have a water bottle that has a sticker on it that has one of my most favorite sayings I've ever heard, and that is, create something today even if it sucks. And that is a true statement. Create something today even if it sucks. Because it might be really crappy, it might suck, but you created something. You used your brain. You made something. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's what we should always be doing, especially in times like this, with this self-quarantining thing going on, and COVID-19 and all this kind of, we don't know what's going on with the world. Guys, create, make music, make art, take pictures, do blogs, go read, go write your own book, all that sort of stuff. And that's kind of what I've always done. I've released a book. I've self-published a book, sold about 250 copies, and that was it. And I'm content with that. I didn't even want to sell any copies. I wanted just one copy that I could have on my bookshelf that I could put there and eventually maybe add more books of my own creations to my own library. Same thing with all this music. That's always what it's been. I just want to write music, be able to release it, maybe have like one physical copy of it, like on a CD or a vinyl or something, and be able to put it with the rest of my music and go, I did that. I created that. And someday maybe my daughter and will see that and think, wow, that's kind of cool. Maybe I should do something like that. Anyway, if you guys have any more questions, please let me know. Comment, like, subscribe, whatever it is that you do with these things. I'm new to this, so send me more questions. I'll try to answer them. On the next episode, I did write this about 6 months after I did this album, so very, very shortly after. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, the link for this album will be in the description or the bio or whatever this is being posted to. Go to bandcamp.com, search for Reign of Darkness and Light, and then you will see my album at the very bottom, Eerie for the Modern Civilization, album number 1. Thank you guys. I love you all. This is a lot of fun. Let's keep doing this. Stick together. And remember, create something today, even if it sucks.